Om Sadashivasamārambhām Shankaracharya-madhyamām Asmadacharya-paryantām Vande Guru-paramparam. Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Saha Veeryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. We were looking at the ajnanam, okay, or ignorance at an individual level and also at the total. Okay, the ajnanam or ignorance at an individual level is the karana for one to be a samsari or a person who thinks that who is limited or confined to a particular body mind sense complex. Okay, at the total level it is called maya shakti, or through other names also like prakriti, pradhanam. All these terms are used. That makes the shuddha chaitanyam or the pure consciousness conditioned by the total conditioning factor called maya is the one we call Ishvara or Sarvajnaha, Sarvashaktiman, all this. One who is all knowledge, all powerful, all pervading. Now this nature of this ajnanam is going to be further discussed. And because of this only, this ajnanam, we take the pure consciousness as an individual, okay, confined to a particular body, so an embodied consciousness. Now this confusion was said by the author in this 50th vakya here. So idameva turiyam, when turiyam or fourth is referred, it is with reference to the other three states of experience, where we have a waker, we have a dreamer, and then there is the one who sleeps also. There is a deep sleep state. So I take myself as the waker, I take myself as the dreamer, and I take myself as the one who is sleeping. But in all these states, the invariable is that I am a conscious being. I am the conscious being to whom everything becomes evident in the waking state. I am the conscious being to whom everything is becoming evident in the dream also. And even in deep sleep, I don't really sleep. Only to me, it becomes evident that I don't even know anything. I am the consciousness for whom that experience that I don't know anything, I slept well. All these things are also happening to me in deep sleep because I am the consciousness which is called in the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, it is called as Drishte Drashtaram Viparilopaha na Vidyate, like that. I am the seer of the very sight itself. Because whatever normally we call as the sight or hearing, etc. But I am the conscious being to whom it becomes evident whether sight is happening or not, whether hearing is happening or not. Like that you can take with reference to every sense organ and the whatever the associated mind there. I am the conscious being to whom everything becomes evident. In sleep, the mind is resolved. The Atma never sleeps. Understand that. I, as a conscious being, I don't sleep. What is sleeping is really the Sukshma Sharira has resolved and gone into a potential state. Therefore, the subject-object duality is not there and nothing is there to be known. Now, that is what we call as sleep. But the conscious being is the same throughout in each and every state The conscious being alone is the invariable. Conscious being alone is the basis for the subject-object duality in the waking and dream. And conscious being is still the basis for the potential subject-object also, because which has resolved into a potential state. Now that conscious being, you are not able to discriminate and know properly. That is the whole problem, correct? The whole issue is that, like Bhashyakara says in the beginning of Brahma Sutra Bhashya also, there are two things. All the objects which we refer to as this, okay, so in Sanskritam we use the Yushmad Shabda for that. Yushmad means anything you can refer to as this, all objects. And there is a subject I, Asmat. Okay, I is only I. But the problem is this Yushmad and Asmat, I and this are totally opposite in nature. Whatever is this or whatever is available as this, all of them are jada or insentient really. I am a conscious being always. In spite of this big difference, there is always a confusion between this and I. That is the whole reason for this samsara itself, or a life of becoming and all the misery which one is experiencing, is because one takes one thing as the other. This is what Bhashyakara calls as adhyasa, or a superimposition. It looks illogical, in fact, it looks impossible or improbable, but still it is there. Because of that only I use sentences like I am blind, for example. I am dark. I am fat. I am hungry. I am thirsty. In all these statements, there is a confusion. There is a confused identity between I and this. Because whatever is fat, whatever is dark, whatever is hungry, whatever is thirsty, whatever is blind, whatever is deaf, all these things are not I. They are all something which is becoming evident to me. I am the consciousness to whom all these facts are becoming evident, and still I take whatever is becoming evident to me, my objects of consciousness, which can be referred to as this, as I, and because of that, all the problems are there. This is what this author is explaining to you based on an analogy. Tapta ayah pindavat aviviktam, he says. So tapta ayaha means what? Red hot iron. Okay, hot iron. Iron by itself does not have any capability to burn anything. But if you heat it up, the hot iron is something which can burn anything, correct? But that doesn't mean that iron itself has the nature of burning something. That is a borrowed quality only, correct? There is no intrinsically, the iron doesn't have any capability to heat, or even it doesn't have any shine also, correct? The hot iron really can, even if you put it in a dark room, it can even give light. So iron by itself cannot give any light, nor can it heat anything. But when it is heated up, the fire, the energy from the fire makes the iron into something which can actually heat something or even give light. But those who are not discriminatory will think that iron itself is really hot, or iron itself can give light, let us say. That is the kind of delusion we are in, because the body and the mind looks sentient, correct? It looks as though it is a sentient entity, but that sentience is not really of the body, nor of the mind, nor of the senses. Because the dead body we all see, it doesn't have any sentiency, correct? It doesn't. have anything. It is jada only. The body by itself is jada, but the manifesting consciousness makes it as though it is sentient or conscious, and because of that there is an identity confusion. That's what this avivikta means, not discriminated. You do not discriminate between the consciousness and the body mind sense complex, which are not really conscious entities, they are all insentient. So this confusion is there. Okay, the pure conscious being, which is what is turiyam here, or the fourth, Shuddha Chaitanyam, Ajnanadi tad upahita Chaitanyabhyam, Tapta ayaf pindavat aviviktam san, Mahavakasya Vachyam. See, there is a Mahavakya is there in our teaching, which is like an equation. Mahavakya, there are many Mahavakyas, four of them are famously talked about. That doesn't mean only four Mahavakyas are there. In a particular Upanishad itself, there are many Mahavakyas. Even in Bhagavad Gita, there are many Mahavakyas are there. But the famous ones are Tattvamasi, Aham Brahmasmi, Prajnanam Brahma, Ayamatma Brahma. Like this, we talk about four different Mahavakyas from different Upanishads and different Vedas also. The Upanishads themselves belong to different Vedas. In all these cases, there are two words which are equated. So, Tattvamasi, Aham Brahmasmi, Ayamatma Brahma. In all these cases, two different words are there. If you take their literal meaning, Vachyam here means direct meaning. Okay, because words have meaning. And the direct meaning in this case, in fact, based on that, there is no equation. Because when you say Tat, Tat is the Jagat Karanam Brahma, okay, which is Sarvajnaha, Sarvashaktiman, which is all knowing, all powerful, everything is all there. Tvam, if you take, Twampada Vachya is the Jiva, the individual. The individual is small knowing, small powerful, you can say, all small. There, everything is all, everything is small here. Then how can you say you are that? You, the individual, is small in every respect. There is no doubt about that. That is your whole problem. In fact, you are very acutely aware of that. In your own judgment, that smallness is a problem. And that is presented by the Shastra as all knowing, all powerful, and the only Karanam, Jagat Karanam, the cause of this entire universe. Where is the identity? Means there is no identity, in fact. Okay. Then, because we take everything as real, if you take this Jiva, the limited individual, as real, and you take Ishvara also as real, as all knowing, etc., it is like non-discrimination between the red hot iron and the actual fire, which is making it hot and bright, correct? So non-discriminating between pure consciousness and the consciousness which is appearing or which is manifesting in these conditioning factors, if you don't discriminate between that, then obviously the direct meanings make no sense, correct? They are contradictory, in fact. How can anybody equate an individual with the cause of this entire world? So direct meaning is not possible. So if you take words, how do words convey meaning? Means in fact Bhashyakara or Adi Shankara actually talks about this. He says words can only convey meaning by indicating four different things, he says. Jati, Guna, Kriya and Sambandha. So words can indicate a genus or a category, correct? Which is called jati. So manushya, if you say manushya itself is a category or a jati, correct? It's an abstract thing. And every human being, individual human being is a vyakti, we say. Jati and vyakti, like that we use. There is a class. Those who know programming, in object oriented programming, we have a class, correct? And we have an object, which is a instance of the class, we say. It is the same thing. The jati is the class, vyakti is the instance. Now a word can indicate a jati, and again it can also indicate a vyakti belonging to that jati. A word can also denote a quality, guna. Right? We say white horse, means white is a guna of a particular horse. Black cow, all these things. There are so many gunas are there. We can list out also. So a word can denote a guna or a quality or a qualification. Then kriya. Word can also denote action. Okay. All verbs are there. We know that. Without verbs, there are no language, in fact. And then words can also denote connection, sambandha. Now whatever the words can directly denote always fall under one of these categories. Okay. That is what we say. That is the power of the word. In fact, the word has a direct power to denote any of these things only. But the problem is in Vedanta, we are teaching you about a vastu, okay, which does not have any jati. Why? Because Upanishad itself says ekam eva advitiyam. It is one and only one. That means it cannot have any jati, or it doesn't even have a second entity in that. So there is no jati. That same vastu is talked about as nirgunam, nirgunam brahma, nirguna chaitanyam, and all that. Means it doesn't have any qualities also. Then the same vastu is talked about as nishkriyam. It doesn't have any activity. And the same vastu is also talked about as asanga. There is no sangha, no association, no relationship with anything. So how do we then even teach you this vastu? Same words have to be still used. Words are the means of knowledge we are using, and we have to teach this to you. How do we teach? Means we use the same words, but we cannot teach you by making you understand the direct meaning of the word. Instead, we say you have to understand the implied meaning. That is called lakshana. So when the direct meaning is taken, that is called mukhya vritti or shakti vritti also sometimes. Okay. But if the implied meaning is to be understood, it is called lakshana vritti, or it is simply called lakshana. So that is what here he is referring to. Mahavakyasya vachyam viviktam sal lakshyam iti cha uchyate. Viviktam sat lakshyam iti uchyate. So the vachyartha of the Mahavakya is still contradictory, because if you take the direct meaning, obviously it is contradictory, correct? And when you take the direct meaning, you are not differentiating between the pure consciousness which is appearing as Ishvara and the same pure consciousness which is appearing as Jiva. Both these things are only appearances. If you take them without discriminating what is appearing as the total and what is appearing as the individual, obviously there is difference and there is confusion, in fact. But if you give up the upadhi and all the differences created by the upadhi. Correct? Upadhi is only a conditioning factor. The differences created by the conditioning factors, if you give up and only take the upahita chaitanyam as the meaning, then there is identity. Correct? That is that viviktam, he says. Correct? Discriminatory means, how do I discriminate? Means I give up all the qualities which are wrongly attributed because of the upadhi or the conditioning factor, and see what is the conditioned consciousness there. That is the viveka here involved. That is the discrimination we have to do. If you do that, in that case, viviktam sat, if it is discriminated like that, then it is called lakshyam. It is not vachyartha anymore. It is the lakshyartha. Means the implied meaning in that is that both are really only the same pure consciousness. One is appearing in this manner. In another, from another standpoint, the same thing is appearing differently. Now, this lakshana vritti or understanding based on implication, normally we consider when the direct meaning does not make any sense. So even in the case of Mahavakya, the direct meaning does not make any sense. Nobody has any doubt about that. It is contradictory. So if the direct meaning or Vachyartha is not making any sense, we have to then either discard it as false or wrong. But in this case, it is a Veda Vakya, correct? We cannot discard it. Then we have to find what is the implied meaning there. So whenever we go for implication, again, there can be three types of implied meaning also. That's what our Mimamsakas have analyzed all these things. Our gurus have analyzed that. And what do they say? There is one thing called Jahal Lakshanam, we say. When we talk about Lakshana Vritti also, Jahal Lakshanam means obviously the direct meaning is contradictory, and in fact you leave the direct meaning completely and take something which is related to the direct meaning as the meaning and then makes meaning of that sentence. That is called Jahal Lakshanam. Of course, in Sanskritam, the standard example for that is Gangayam Ghoshaha. Okay. So the village is on Ganga. If I say that Ganga, the direct meaning is what? The river Ganga only, correct? Whatever is flowing there. Flowing water is the river Ganga. Of course, the village cannot be on the flowing water itself. Obviously, it is wrong. So we cannot take the direct meaning that the flowing water is the meaning here for the word Ganga. Therefore, we give up the meaning of flowing water and say that Gangayam Tire, correct? Ganga Tire means the banks of the river Ganga, the whatever village or settlement is there. So there the banks of the river Ganga is not river Ganga, it is something related to river Ganga. So we have given up the meaning of river Ganga, but taken the related banks and understood that this village or this settlement is on the banks of river Ganga. This is called Jahal Lakshanam. Then there is something called Ajahal Lakshanam also. Without giving up the meaning, but you add something extra. In the previous case, you left something and took something related and understood the meaning. In Ajahal Lakshanam, you keep that original also, but that still doesn't make any sense. So you add something and then make up the meaning. So the standard example here is Shveto Dhavati, the white runs. Okay, white color cannot run by itself, correct? It's only a guna. So basically, we have to now understand wherever this guna resides, that is running. It can be a white horse, it can be a white cow. I don't know. It depends on where you are, correct? If you are standing in a race course or something, it is a white horse. If you are standing in some goshala, then it will be a white cow. But white is still there because it is white cow only is running, correct? You do not give up the meaning of white. Or otherwise, we go to a restaurant and say, give me idli. Okay. Now, if the waiter or server takes that literally, then he has to bring idli, two idlis and give it to you in hand, correct? They don't give that alone. They give the idli, but along with that, they give a plate, they give chutney, they give sambar, etc. That is also understood. That is also one kind of ajahal lakshanam, because idli also is there. Along with that, other things are also given to you. So by implication, obviously nobody wants just an idli, correct? Even in a hotel context, we understand what the customer is asking. Then there is something called bhagatyaga lakshanam or jaha jahal lakshanam, it is called. That means you give up some portion, you retain some portion and try to understand. That is called bhagatyaga. One bhaga alone you leave. Now the standard example for this is Soyam Devadattaha. So this is that Devadatta. When you have a sentence like this, obviously this Devadatta is not the same as that Devadatta because their qualities are totally different. This Devadatta is an old Devadatta. You don't even recognize, in fact. You have seen one Devadatta 20 years back. And now you are seeing the same Devadatta and you are not even recognizing this Devadatta. Somebody else has to come and tell you, hey, this is that Devadatta whom you know very well. In fact, he slapped you or something like that. They may remind you, I think. So whatever it is. But when this is that Devadatta kind of a sentence is used, obviously we give up all the qualities associated with that place and that time. And also this place and this time also you have to give up all the qualities because there is no equality or identity in the qualities. But the person is the same, correct? So the dharma you have to give up, the dharmi is the same. That is our understanding. Dharmi means one who has all the qualities. So you give up all the qualities of space-time 1 and 2. You give up all the qualities of space-time again in another space-time. And then, but still the substantive is the same or the person is the same or the dharmi is the same. So even in Soyam Devadattaha, when we talk about the identity, the dharma is not the same. Obviously, we all know that, but we are talking about the dharmi. Similarly, the Tattvamasi also is traditionally understood as Bhagatyaga Lakshanam or Jaha Jahal Lakshanam. In fact, there is also opinion that it is actually Jahal Lakshanam, but that is that you can say is a minority opinion. But mostly the Tattvamasi is considered to be a Bhagatyaga Lakshanam or Jaha Ajahal Lakshanam. And when that kind of implication by giving up one part and retaining one part of the meaning and then arriving at the identity. So how do we do that? When we say Tat Ishvaraha, in that you give up all the dharma which is coming from the Upadhi. The Maya Upadhi is the one which makes Brahman appear as Ishvara. Then whatever Maya Upadhi Krita dharma, you have to give up all that dharma, correct? All the qualities. Like Sarvajnaha, Sarvashaktiman, all these things are gone. Only Shuddha Chaitanyam alone is the Lakshyam there, or the implied meaning. Similarly, Tvam also, all the Upadhi Krita Dharma you have to give up. Like I am Alpajnaha, Alpashaktiman, all that, and whatever is left out after giving up all that is only again the same Shuddha Chaitanyam, pure conscious being. And there, that dharmi alone, the identity is there because there is only one consciousness which is appearing as both Ishvara and Jiva. Like even in the dream is very useful to understand here because the funny thing is you are the basis for the entire dream space time and dream world, correct? But you also become a part. You also become a part of the dream world and start interacting within the dream world as though you are a limited being in the dream world, correct? Now that is the kind of situation in waking also. That's what Gaudapada Acharya and all, they say that there is no real difference. In fact, here also, there is only one reality which is appearing as the total, as the basis of the entire the waking space-time, and which is also appearing as the individual who is interacting within this space-time. And there is a confusion there, and that confusion only has to go away, and by understanding the implied meaning of the Mahavakya, you understand that, okay, you understand with certain discrimination, you give up the contradictory dharmas and understand the dharmi is the same. So this is the lakshya. So I just wanted to give you what is vachyartha, what is lakshya, or the intended meaning. That which is indicated by an intended meaning is the lakshya. That which is denoted by a direct meaning is vachya. Of course, one more type of word, vritti also is there, called gauna vritti. Okay, means figurative, like simho manavakaha. If you say the student is a lion, or nowadays all politicians call themselves as lions and all these tigers, etc. So that cannot again be a literal meaning, correct? So we have to take that, or even I can call myself some simha because I have hair like a lion, you can say. Okay. So some based on some quality comparison, that is called figurative usage. Okay, that is also there. Okay, but that is not relevant to our teaching here. So, but anyway, I'm just mentioning. So this vachyartha, lakshyartha, you have to be very clear. So what our author says is, if you go only by the vachyartha, you are confused. You are aviviktam. That is the aviviktam part of it. You have not discriminated correctly. But once you discriminate and understand that the dharmas themselves are only appearances, are all upadhikrita, and the dharmi is the same, then you have discriminated and understood the implied meaning correctly. Okay. Now, this what is making all these appearances? Again, we have to say ajnanam only, correct? That is the ajnanam. The ajnanam only makes the appearance of the individual, and the same thing is also making the total appear also. So that's what now he continues. Asya ajnanasya avarana vikshepa namakam asti shakti dvayam. So the ajnana has two powers. The ignorance itself has two powers. What are those two powers? Avarana means concealment, covering. And vikshepanam means, or vikshepana is, or vikshepa is projection. So it has an ability to cover, or power to cover, and also project. So vikshepa namakam asti shakti dvayam. So one is called avarana shakti, another is called vikshepa shakti. Now he is going to talk about the avarana shakti here. Avarana shakti hi tavad alpaha api megha aneka yojana ayatam aditya mandalam avalokayitr nayana patha vidhayakataya yatha achadayati. Okay, now it's a very interesting analogy is being given here. When we talk about the covering, immediately you are all intelligent students, you will ask, how can the limitless Brahman be covered? Okay, how can anything cover the limitless? Isn't it stupid? Means, yes, the limitless cannot be really covered. But who said it is a real covering? That's the beauty of Ajnanam. It's not a real covering, in fact. So the analogy given is, see, even though the cloud is limited, correct? Alpaha api megaha. The cloud is limited and the sun is so big, correct? The real dimensions of the sun, if you take, they say that it is like some 108 times of Earth, or I don't know, or even bigger than that. It's a very big dimension. Sun is huge. How can a small patch of cloud then cover the sun? It does cover, correct? But from the standpoint of the person who is seeing, a small cloud can cover the entire sun. Correct? That's what he says here. Aditya Mandalam, Aneka Yojana Ayatam means what it is? A lot of yojanas, correct? Aneka. Yojana means again, traditionally, I think it is about 8 miles is what they say, or 12 to 15 kilometers and all that. So one yojana is around 8 miles. And sun, of course, is very big. Even our people have known that. And cloud is so small. But from the standpoint of the person who is looking, avaloka yitra means the one who is looking at the sun or one who is looking at the cloud. Nayana patha means what? The path of his eyesight. The eyesight of the person looking is only limited, correct? That can be covered by the cloud. So pidhaya kataya means it is the one which is covering now. Pidhana means basically like a covering or even a top portion of something. Okay, lid and all that. So the limited cloud covers the sun, or as though covers the sun, we have to say. It does not really cover, correct? That's why he says yatha achadayati iva, as though the limited cloud is covering the sun. Similarly, tatha ajnanam, the ignorance, parichinnam api, even though the ignorance itself is limited, parichinnam api, atmanam aparichinnam, the self which is really limitless, and it is also asamsarinam, it is not really something which is undergoing all these problems, like a life of becoming and all that. So, which is not really a samsari. Although the Atma is not really a samsari and it is limitless, this limited ajnanam, from the standpoint of the buddhi, because it is all from an individual standpoint here, the author is talking about, the covering is basically at this level of the individual only. Really speaking, we cannot talk about a covering for Ishvara, because when we talk about Ishvara as a Sarvajnaha, this self-knowledge also is included. So Ishvara himself is out of his own Maya. That's what is our understanding, correct? It is like Ishvara is doing a daydreaming, and all the characters in his daydream are all delusion. They are all in delusion. Okay. So Ishvara is fully aware of the whatever appearances created by Maya. So Maya, we or the magician himself is not fooled by his own magic, correct? So that's why the author here, when we, in fact, in this text is very interesting. We'll see later. When he is talking about the covering or avarana shakti, he talks about it from the standpoint of the individual. Then silently, when he is talking about the projection, he will change to the standpoint of the Ishvara, because he has to talk about the entire creation as a projection. And obviously, the entire waking world is not the projection of a single jiva, correct? We do not look upon it like that. But he will just shift the standpoint at that time. But even from an Ishvara standpoint, if we talk about the Avarana, still the Avarana has to be from the standpoint of the one for whom the Ishvara becomes covered. Okay. Ishvara himself or herself or whatever gender it is not under the spell of one's own Maya. It is not like that. The Mayavi or the magician is only creating a spell for others. And others have a certain covering because they think it is real. They do not understand the appearance. So anyway, here, the limited cloud of ignorance covers the unlimited Atma from the standpoint of the individual only. So avalokayitra buddhi pidhaya kataya achadayati iva. Again here it is all iva only. Because the consciousness which is manifesting in a particular body mind sense complex, from that standpoint alone, the original consciousness itself is covered. And that's why you take yourself as an embodied conscious being undergoing all the problems. So even here the covering is only eva, as though it is covered. And this as though covering, the ability to as though cover is the Avarana Shakti we are talking about. Tadrisham Samarthyam, he says. You have to connect. Avarana Shakti hi Tadrisham Samarthyam. It is having this kind of capability or ability. And what is that? That's what he says here. Like even a limited cloud can cover the entire sun from the standpoint of the onlooker. The limitless Atma also is covered by the self-ignorance from the standpoint of the individual person or the self. And how do you know all these things? Who has told this? Means he is now quoting Hasta Malakacharya. There is Hasta Malakiyam, like that. There is a text is there. One of the celebrated Sishyas of Shankaracharya and Guru in the Parampara. So he gives this clearly. He says, Tad Uttam, this has been said by Hasta Malakacharya. Ghanachanna drishtihi Ghanachanna markam yatha manyate nishprabham cha ati mudaha. So ati mudaha, he says. Not normal mudaha means idiot or deluded person. This is even filtered idiot and all we say sometime in Tamil. Vadigattina muttad. Like that. Ati mudaha. Who is ati mudaha? Somebody who is totally deluded, because basically normally people not knowing other objects is fine, but here one doesn't know oneself means it is really a bad situation. But anyway, that is what most of the people are. But generally, if you take somebody who is not very bright, that person thinks Ghanachanna drishtihi means his view or drishti is blocked by a cloud. Okay, Ghanachanna, it is covered by a cloud, Ghana, dense cloud. And based on that, what does he conclude? He says Ghanachanna markam means the sun itself is covered. Really, that is the thinking of this deluded person. But not only that, he also says further the sun is dull or it's not bright. Nishprabham, also he concludes, because the cloud has covered the sun. Why he is saying all this is, see, you have to relate it with the jiva. Because we all say, I slept, correct? Or I became unconscious. Somebody faints, then that guy gets up, then he says, I fainted, I became unconscious and all that. But that unconscious is not really, you did not become unconscious. You as a conscious being can never become unconscious. Basically, the fainting and losing consciousness or going to deep sleep, etc., are only that mind has become resolved or gone into a potential state. That's all it is. Consciousness never loses its brightness. Like sun never loses its brightness, correct? It is the same sun always. Whether the cloud comes and goes are all immaterial to the sun. From the standpoint of the sun, in fact, the cloud doesn't even exist. But from the onlooker standpoint, if one considers, because now the cloud has covered the sun itself has become dull. It has lost its brightness. If you conclude, it is like saying I slept only, because I slept itself is a very deluded statement, because there is no sleep for Atma, in fact. Atma is called alupta drik. Alupta drik means what? It never stops seeing, unceasing seeing. Okay, because everything becomes evident to it. Even if nothing is becoming evident, it is still same only. Its nature remains the same, conscious being. So here somebody who concludes that the sun has lost its brightness because the cloud has covered it. Similarly, in a deep sleep state, basically it's all only a potential state, correct? Ignorance only is there, but still you conclude that I, the self, has slept or I have become unconscious and all that. It is like considering like that. That's what the Acharya is pointing out here. In fact, he says that Tatha Baddhavad Bhati Yaha Muda Drishte Sa Nitya Upalabdhi Swarupaha Ahamatma. See, the Aham, whatever you say as I, which is Atma or self, I, the self, is Nitya Upalabdhi Swarupaha means what? It is always a conscious being. Upalabdhi here is basically to which everything becomes evident. To whom everything is becoming evident, that entity is always a conscious being. Its consciousness never goes away anywhere. It is its very nature, it is its very swarupa. That conscious being is always the same conscious being. Waking, dream, sleep and all is only with reference to the Sukshma Sharira. Okay, the Sukshma Sharira, when it is fully awake, the waking world is there. When it is half awake and then it starts projecting an entire dream world, then it is dream. When it has resolved into a potential state, that is sleep. And even during sleep, Atma is the same. Understand that. Nothing has happened to the Atma. But you think that as though the Atma itself is bound by all these states and whatever is happening in these states, and you think that that's all real. That is really delusion only. That is the Muda Drishti he is talking about here. So this he quotes the Asamalaka for this. So further what? Anaya avritasya atmanaha कर्तृत्व भोक्तृत्व सुखित्व दुःखित्वादि samsara sambhavanapi bhavati. So for this person for whom this covering is of ajnana is there, correct, the individual, for that person only takes oneself as the karta bhokta, right? I am a doer, I am an enjoyer, and because of that again you take yourself as I am a sukhi, I am enjoying something, I am a dukhi, I am in pain, etc. And dukkhitvadi, adi padat, you have to further take other things, like even I have janana, marana, etc. So that kind of a life of becoming, samsara sambhavana, the possibility of having a life of becoming is there for the one who does not know one's own reality, the reality of oneself, one does not know. And how it is like, again, they give an analogy here, yatha swa ajnanena avritayam rajvam sarpatva sambhavana, like even not able to see the rajju, the rope. So the rope is covered by your ajnanam or your ignorance of the rope itself. But on that rope now you are seeing a snake. Okay. So like even the rope getting covered, here also your own swarupa is covered, and therefore there is a possibility of this entire samsara coming up. Like even a snake can be projected if the reality of the rope is covered due to ignorance, one's own ignorance of the rope. So that's what he's first giving, the possibility of a projection being there. And now he is going to talk about the projection itself. What does he say? Vikshepa Shakti hi tu. So now Vikshepa Shakti is talking about. Already Avarana Shakti we have discussed. So Vikshepa Shakti hi tu yatha rajju ajnanam swavrita rajjau swashaktya sarpadikam udbhavayati evam ajnanamapi स्वावृत आत्मनि स्वशक्त्या आकाशादि प्रपंचम उद्भावयति तादृशम सामर्थ्यम. So vikshepa shakti hi tadrisham samarthyam, that is the connection. Vikshepa shakti is having this kind of capability or ability. What is that? The power of projection has this capability. What's the capability? Like even the the rope which is covered by the ignorance of the rope, there you project either a snake or anything else also you can see, correct? Whatever else you see there is a possibility of that projection. Similarly, the one who doesn't know one's own reality, that is covered, swa avrita atmani. So one's own self which is covered by this self-ignorance, and by one's own, that ignorance itself has that shakti then. That's what we say, swashaktya. It projects the entire akasha, etc. The whole space-time is now projected. And you yourself now think that you are one of the beings in that space-time and undergo all sorts of problems. So this is where I told you the avarana part, it is very clear he is talking about an individual being covered, correct? But when the Vikshepa here is talked about, the author has subtly moved to the projection of the entire space-time itself now, because he's talking about Akashadi Prapancham Udbhavayati. This entire space-time, the totality of the space-time and all the objects within the space-time itself is now talked about as a projection due to one's ignorance about oneself. So here the standpoint is from the projection is from the standpoint of Ishvara. But that is really only a projection is not known to you, correct? That is the avarana we are talking about here. So the projection part we have to understand from the standpoint of Ishvara. But even the avaranam which is talked about here is the avaranam for the individual only. Okay. But the projection is by Ishvara. So that is the power of projection. And this also is said, again he is quoting Vakya Sudha. Vakya Sudha is actually another name for the text called Drigdrishya Viveka by Vidyaranya Swami. So in the 13th verse in the Drigdrishya Viveka, Vidyaranya, in fact this is the second portion of that verse. Vikshepa Shaktihi Lingadi Brahmandantam Jagat Srijet. So Mayayaha Shakti Dvayam, like that he talks about in the first part. The Maya has two types of Shakti, and one of that Shakti is the Vikshepa Shakti, and that projection only projects everything. Lingadi means here Linga Shariram. Okay, the subtle body is called Linga Sharira, or the Sukshma Sharira is also called the Linga Sharira, because Sukshma Sharira, if it is there only, it indicates that that Jiva is there. Otherwise, there is no response, correct? Then it's only a dead body. The body to be alive and the Jiva to be there, the Linga Sharira, the Sukshma Sharira has to be there. That's why it is called Linga Sharira, because Linga means indication. Okay. So Linga the Brahmandantam, from starting from this individual Sukshma Sharira until up to the Brahmanda, everything is only created by this projection, Ishvara's projection only. Okay. It is all Vikshepa Shakti. Like this Avarana and Vikshepa have been talked about now. Further, we have to now understand that this Avarana and Vikshepa are all only due to Upadhi. It does not really affect the Upahita Chaitanyam or the conditioned consciousness. That you have to discriminate and understand clearly. So about which I think he will continue now. All that we will see next week. Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om.